So we have studied this Maven build life cycle, right? We have seen the Maven compiler compile like that, right? Now we'll see some other phases. Just one. So we'll see another stage. I'm just waiting for a few other people to join. In 2 minutes, I'll start. Okay, then. So this MEN compiler compile will do that compilation. Now we'll go for another thing called that will be done by Maven compiler plugin. We have seen yesterday plugins. What are plugins? Plugins are used to achieve the goals. And what is a goal? Goal is a phase, is a part of the phase in the default life cycle. For example, not only default life cycle, the build life cycle. So in the build life cycle, we have 3 different parts: default, clean, and site. So in the default life cycle, we have different phases like validate, compile, test, package. Okay, now the plugins are helpful to achieve these phases. For example, I want to compile, so I'll use compiler plugin. Okay, if Maven wants to compile, Maven will use compiler plugin. Okay, similarly, in order to test it, there will be one more plugin. So like that. So okay, so like that. So for example, yesterday we have seen compiler plugin. So in compiler plugin, what will happen? This plugin is responsible to compile the Java files into .class files. Okay, this is equal to running Java C. This is equal to running Java C or that file name .java. So this plugin enables compile phase of default lifecycle. So when we say Maven compiler compile, in pom.xml, we added the compiler plugin. So we are telling Maven to run compiler plugin for compile phase. So this phase, we are telling Maven to run compiler plugin for compile phase. So compile phase will compile .java files to .class files with the help of compiler plugin. So the .class files will be stored in the target folder inside the classes folder. Now let us take another plugin, which is called Maven Surefire plugin. Maven Surefire plugin. So what is Maven compiler plugin? This plugin is required to compile the Java files into .class files. Now this plugin is useful to run the tests inside the project by following command. Okay. So that is using ambient test. So this plugin is useful to run the tests inside the project by following command that is using ambient test. Okay, using this command, using this, we can run the tests inside our project. See, test means the unit test code and all that, right? See, for example, yesterday we created one project here, right? Okay, this is a simple project we created and we compiled it. I think I imported this project in the Eclipse also. Let me open that Eclipse. So I'll just change this to from 1.5 to see, I can write some test cases, right? To write test cases, we have seen some test cases, right? For example, we have used Mockito and JUnit earlier, right? We'll use the same test cases. So what I'll do here, I'll say and then let me write some test cases. Okay, let us take this test case. Okay. So what I'll do here, I'll create one sum. In sum in x comma into y. Here I'll say return x plus. That's all. Now you see, this is a unit test case, okay, which we have seen in this. Now, what I'll do is now I'll check. Now I will run the test cases with Maven. Okay, see, from Eclipse we can do this, run as JUnit test. But what I'm telling you is from the command prompt. All the command prompt commands, like creating the Maven project from command prompt, compiling the Maven project from command prompt, testing the project from command prompt. Test means this one, this life cycle, right? Test means this one, right? I mean, this phase. Run the unit test inside the project. So for test, for compile, we will use compiler plugin. Okay, we added the compiler plugin. So what is the compiler plugin we added? This one, right? Okay, we added compiler plugin. So this is your compiler. Now for Surefire plugin, this is used for to run the tests. So let me check. So let us check the latest dependency for Surefire plugin. So this is your Surefire plugin. Copy this. This is your Surefire plugin. Yeah, take this plugin. So change this part. Okay. This is the Surefire plugin. Here is the Surefire plugin. Now, once I have plugin from the now I already have now the unit test case also. This is a simple unit test case. Now what I'll do, I'll go to my command prompt. Where is this path? So MVN, sorry. Yeah. MVN site. Sorry, MVN test. So what I do, I just say, so once, so add the Surefire plugin in Maven form.xml. Like this. Next is add. So once we add and once we have test cases in our project. Test code, JUnit or Mockito code in our project. In our project, then execute the test code as below. This is MVN test. So once we type MVN test, now you see it will run the test cases. I mean the JUnit test case. there are some test failures. Why? Because if you see, yeah, when I do a sum of these 5 and 10, what is what is expected result? It should be 15, right? I give an expected result of 30. That's why it is failed. Some 5 plus 10 should be 15, right? So that's why if you see, this is given a failure. So app test will give that. My MVN test will give that. Okay. Now just run it. Now you see the build is success. So test all the test cases. So Surefire plugin will execute all the test cases. Okay. Now let us see one more plugin. For generating the site. Okay, for generating the site. Site is mainly used to generate Java documentation. Okay, let us see how this will work. So for that, what I do is the third one. Maven site plugin. This plugin is used to generate project documentation. Okay. And how site plugin? I already added site plugin yesterday for one testing. So this is how we'll add site plugin. This is the site plugin. You can also get from this from net also, from this one. So we'll add site plugin like this. So this is a site plugin. Okay, once we add this site plugin to our form.xml, okay. Now you just type MVN site. So you see now what MVN site will do is now run the command MVN site from the command prompt. So it will generate, this command will generate static documentation to the code. And this documentation will be in form of HTML. Will be in form of HTML. So when I say HTML, just refresh this project. So if you see site web app, this got generated. You see site and site web, these two folders got generated. So you got some HTML, but we cannot view this HTML directly like this. It is better to run from a browser, right? From a view we can run. So what we can do is Maven provides one more command. Okay. There is one more command called, now run the command mbn site. There is one more command provided by Maven, which is mbn site :run. So this is used to generate, this is used to view the generated doc in the browser. Okay. In the browser, internally this will start a server. Internally this command will start a Jetty server. Jetty is like a kind of a simple server, which is a lightweight server, web server, not like a Tomcat. Jetty is still lightweight than Tomcat. Jetty server, and the port is 80. That the port is 8080, and the default port is 80. See, I'll show you now how that will happen. So let me type this command. So you see, it internally started a server on the port 8080. I can open now. Local host 8080. I don't know why it is not starting. Yeah, if you see here, this is the documentation of the project. So this is the project information. So where you get the dependencies about plugin summary. Then if you want to actually see what are the dependencies of this project, so this is using all these dependencies. Okay, you can see the dependency tree also. You can see the dependency. For example, these are all called transitive dependencies. So this group contains this. You see, for example, what are the dependencies used in this project? Only this dependency, right? Only this dependency. So if you see, this project is having this dependency: JUnit Jupyter 5.7. Now, inside this, we have API jar, and inside this, we have API garden jar, and this is using these three dependencies. Okay, so like that. And then so this is your value demo method, one snapshot jar. So these are the transitive dependencies. Okay, mainly you'll get all the transitive dependencies from that. Okay. So actually transitive dependencies you should understand very clearly. I mean, this is one of the important. See, this will be helpful to resolve your in transitive dependencies. Say, for example, in pom.xml, I added one dependency. Now, inside this dependency internally, sorry, inside this dependency internally, it is referring some other dependencies. See, for example, so this is the dependency. Inside this is the main project. This main project jar internally is referring this dependency, JUnit jar, which I added already. Now this dependency jar, JUnit Jupyter jar, is again referring inside API jar, and inside API jar, these three are referring. Okay. So this JUnit Jupyter jar is referring, I mean, is depending on API jar, params jar, and engine jar. And in again API jar, these three are the dependencies. Okay. So I'll just tell you actually, I think you are just see, I'm going line by line, right? See, because you might be knowing Maven, but others actually don't know Maven. I mean, in that batch. So that's why I'm explaining slowly. Just wait for some time, okay? So because if I get charts frequently, the class gets disrupted. So for example, so if you see, so this is one dependency. I mean, this jar is actually depending on this jar. Similarly, this jar is again internally depending on this jar. Again, this jar is depending on three jars, like. No, internally, if you say, see, if I have this dependency, internally this dependency is resolving into three. This part, and this part. Okay, that means this jar is internally referring this jar, and this jar. Again, API jar internally is referring these three jars. Okay, like that. Okay. So this is what we call transitive dependency. So transitive dependency means if one dependency is referring other dependency, then this is called transitive dependency. If one dependency is referring another dependency, suppose we can say like this. Let me tell you this. If dependency X or dependency A is referring dependency B, and dependency B is referring dependency C, then indirectly dependency A is referring dependencies. That's what. That is called, this is called transitive dependency. So in the same example, if you see here, okay, if you see here, sorry. So if you see here, this is depending on, is it depending on this one, and this is depending on, and this is depending on this one. So that means indirectly is depending on that means indirectly this is depending on this one. Okay, that is what transitive dependency. Okay. Okay, next we'll see. Yeah, next I'll type another command to see it. I'll just type ambient site. I think one of the one of our student has asked this. So you got a summary report. Okay, let me. So when I say site run, so you can see the home project and all. Okay, so what are the projects and then dependencies. Okay, this is the main. See, Maven mainly will provide you the dependency. This is most important for debugging. Now, suppose if one of the dependencies is failing, so you can understand the dependency graph. Okay, and you can actually exclude the dependency. Okay, now next we'll see another phase. So which is it's a deploy. Yeah, one person has asked what is the doubt? How to exclude? Now, see, how to exclude means, for example, you can do like this, right? Suppose I'm just putting, okay, in this JUnit Jupyter, all are required for me. If I suppose like this, if I see all are required for me. JUnit Jupyter is insert API card is required. If I exclude any of the jar, you will not execute. You cannot execute the test cases. but there might be some jars which may be repeating. For example, what I'll do is, let me take Spring Boot jars. Say I'm building a Spring Boot Maven dependency. Okay, Spring Boot jars. Let me put Spring Boot starter test or Spring MVC. Let me try this because Spring MVC Maven dependency. What I'll do is I'll go for I'll add this dependency. Okay, let me add this dependency. Just I'm building a Spring project. Then I will also add Spring MVC dependency, the latest versions. Now again, let me see if I can. I'm not coding anything, just I'm adding the dependencies. Okay. If you see, these are the translate, these are the dependencies. We come to this one. You see, now this main project jar is depending on Spring 4, and internal Spring 4 is referring Spring JCL. Next, it is depending on Spring MVC. If you see the tree structure, these three are under this main. And inside this, these are all under this. What I'll do is let me add one more jar. Okay. So let me add one more jar. Or I'll add is it Spring AOP? Okay, Spring AOP. If that's AOP. We'll see some any other dependencies are duplicated. So what I'll do, MVN site run. Another dependency. I say I'm trying to see any duplicate jars. If I get, I'll exclude one jar. Can anyone can tell in Spring Boot or Spring where we get duplicate dependencies? So Spring All are equal only, right? Let me put I'm just wanted to see any dependencies. I think you see no dependency. Let me add Spring test management dependency. Let me see this. No, Spring Core and Spring MVs will not have similar jars. No. See, Spring Core is only having Spring JCL, but Spring MVC is having Spring Beans, Spring Context, Expression, Web. So which are different. So let me do this Spring test. Let me add. Now what I'll do, no, this is also not having any internally. Where is Spring Context referring? Only this one. Where is another Spring Context referring? Search for here. No other, right? See, if we get any duplicate jars, we can exclude one. Let me add one more jar. Yeah, for example, let us take, assume that somewhere in the project, Spring Context is referred. Okay, let us assume. Now I want to exclude this from this dependency, from the main dependency, from this MPP. Okay, what you can do is here you can put like this exclusions. So you can say exclusion. And then I'll say group ID. Okay. So group ID is this one. Spring framework. Okay. Next is artifact ID. Artifact is Spring Context. I will exclude this, okay, somewhere. That means from this WebMVC. Next is version. And a version is not required, that's all. And then I'll close this tag. First, I'll close this. Suppose I want to exclude some other things also, I can put in this. So under exclusions, I'll do like this, okay? Now, let me see here, Ambient site run. See, generally we'll use exclusions only if the jar is not required in our project. So let me open here. Where I'll compare the other ones. Localhost 8080. Now, if you see the dependency graph, now you see okay, sorry. There is some extra tag that has been. Okay. So now what I'll do? Now you see in WebMVC jar, there is no context jar come. But earlier it was coming. See, under WebMVC jar, we show context jar. But now, under WebMVC jar, that jar got excluded. See, under this jar got excluded. So that means we excluded. Under WebMVC, we excluded that. Okay. So this is how we exclude. Okay, then you understood, right? How transcript dependencies work and how this site command. Everyone understood? Clear? Now there is one more plugin. There is one more plugin that is for clean. What do clean tells? Everyone understood what I was telling today? Today's close. Okay. So there's one more. There is one more thing called MVN clean. What clean does? MVN clean plugin. Okay. Maven clean plugin will clear all the files generated under target. Okay. So that means, so whatever in target, these are all the files are there, right? All will get cleared. See, let us assume. See. MVN clean. Now you see, it deleting the target folder. Now just refresh it. Now you see, there is nothing in the target. You see, all the class files, the site documentation, everything got clear. Okay, that's what clean plug. Now there is one more phase called. There are two important phases in the build life cycle. In the default phase, so clean is one which you have seen, that is 3-part, and site. Now in the compile phase, we have seen the compiler plugin will compile the Java files. Next, deploy will, sorry, not deploy. Test will run the test packages, test one. Okay. So we can use package for packaging the jar file. Okay. But we can go directly for install. So what install will do is install This is very important. So Maven install plugin. So this will compile. See, when this install plugin will do all the activities at once. What it will compile. Okay. So Maven install phase will do all the activities at once. So in the install phase, Maven install phase. So this will do all the activities at once, all the phases at once. Which phases? So first validates the form.xml. Second, compiles Java files. .java files to .class files. Next, he executes the tests. Next, packages into jar. Next, installs the jar in the local repository. All that means if you see, this is a part of validate phase, right? Go above. This is a part of validate phase. Okay. The next one is part of compile phase, test phase, package phase. So all it will do. So it is a part of compile phase, validate phase. So validate phase will get executed. Compile phase will get executed. Next, a test phase will get executed. Next, a package phase will get executed. And this will be installed. So that means if I do all, if I do install, at a time, all these phases will get executed. Okay. At a time, all the phases will. So for that, how I'll do? So use Maven command mbn install. Now, if I say mbn install, it will do all the things. So let me do, see, mbn install. See, it is compiling, testing, packaging. You see, it is compiling into target classes, compiling. Next, it is running the tests. Next, it is packaging to jar, building jar. All the things. So now you can see you got a jar now. See. So you got a jar. Okay, and it is installed in your local repository also. Can we see in the local repository that this got installed? Where is in your local repository? So if you see, this is your C users.m2 repository, your user ID.m2 repository. Now let me see whether what is my group ID? com.test group, right? Go to that com.test group. Yeah, see, test group. Demo Maven project. See, that got installed. See, that jar got installed in your local repository. When? Just now. At 8:35 AM today, just now. So your local repository path is this one. .m2 repository. So next time when you want to refer this dependency in some other project, so you can add this dependency in that project. So that first it can fetch from the local repository and add it to the new project. So that is what here it is doing. So maven install. Suppose I want to clean and install at a time. So for that, clean and install will run in a single command. Use maven command to clean and install at a time. Clean the old files, clean the old classes and files in the target folder. And then install. The install means it will be part of validate, compile, test, package, install. The new. So install the latest changes. So you can. So how you do that command? MVN clean install. So when I say MVN clean install, so it is doing cleaning. Okay, it is deleting the target folder, then it is going for install. So first it is executing clean and then it is doing this one, install. Okay. Actually, by default for install plugin is not required. Otherwise, if you want to use install plugin also, you can use it. Just like how I used for compiler plugin, shootfire plugin, site plugin, you can go for install plugin also. But by default, install with the latest version of Maven, install plugin will automatically do it all that. You don't need to add plugin also. If you want to add plugin also, not an issue. So if you want to add plugin, Maven install plugin. See, this is your plugin. So let me copy this part. So this is your group ID. You can do that, but not an issue. Even if you don't have these plugins also, not an issue. It is working. So there is one more plugin. There is one more phase called deploy. So there is one more phase called deploy. What do you mean by deploy is? So this will deploy the artifact to a remote repository. Install will do it to a local repository. So this will deploy to a remote repository. Okay. So again we can add deploy plugin also. So just like how install we added, deploy plugin also we can add. But so this is your deploy plugin. So this is your deploy plugin. Now, but only thing is we have to specify the address of the local repository. By default it will go to this path. In users, the user ID .m2 repository, it will install. But whenever you want to deploy the artifact to remote repository, artifact means the jar or bar or the file. So we need to specify the URL of the remote repository in the distributed management section. In form.exe. So for example, like this I'll add. So in my form.xml, I'll say distribution management. And then I'll say repository. And here I'll give the ID of the repository, some test repo, something like this. Okay, I can give any ID. Okay, the name also I can give anything, but the URL should be the correct URL. So here I'll give the URL. Here I'll say HTTP slash something like my repo URL. See, if you use repositories like JFrog or Artifactory, Nexus, they'll give some URLs for you. So you can deploy those in those repositories. So there are some third-party repositories that is coming. Okay, like this. But currently I don't have that repository to show you. I'm just giving a background. So when I say maven deploy, mbn deploy, so what it will do, it will take the jar file and copy this to this repository so that the other projects can connect to this repository and import your project. Okay. Build is not a phase in the maven, right? You only install is phase. If you see, build is as a whole maven build tool. But install is actually the phase of your maven. So that's all. So there is only one topic left in maven. Tomorrow I'll show you. So with this tomorrow I'll complete maven, and tomorrow afterwards I'll start logging. I think that's all. Any questions? See, I don't have this repository management to show you. You can actually try. You can try from your end. There is some repositories like JFrog artifact. I don't have that currently now. You can go to this JFrog artifactory and create your own repository ID. And in your form.xml, you add the URL of your repository so that your jar will be deployed in that repository. JFrog. I don't have currently now. See, what do you mean by remote repository? And see, actually, what is the purpose of repository? I told in the first session. See, what is the purpose of remote? See, for example, you are building a library. You are building a library, sir. So you are building a library, okay? You are building an artifact, maven artifact. Okay, which is a jar file. Now, if you install that in your local repository, Local repository is where it is part of your system. It is in your system only. It is in your system. Local repo is in your system, so that tomorrow, if some other new project you are building in your local system, if it wants to use this artifact jar, which has been developed as a project, it can connect to the local repository and get it. And how? You specify the dependency, this dependency in this project pom.xml. Okay. Say this dependency is X. So dependency is X. So here in the new project pom.xml, you will add the dependency X. Add dependency X. Okay, so that for this dependency, it will connect from local repo and get it. Now the same jar, if you deploy to a remote repository, like that, there are some third-party remote repositories that are available in the market, like Artifactory, Nexus. So generally, projects will follow this. Artifactory is part of JFrog. So they will provide. You can set up an account and provide a remote URL. Now, if you use a deploy phase and specify in the distributed management like this in your pom.xml, this is your install phase actually. MVN install. Now, when you put MVN deploy and add this URL here, because it has to know your pom.xml should know that your maven should know that the URL of that repository, it will connect. Now, tomorrow, some other project, some other company or some other project, or within the organization, different teams, they are building a new project and they want to use your library, your jar. So what they do, they will connect to the remote repository and add it. So how they will add? Just simple. So in pom.xml, they will add the dependency and they'll refer this remote repository so that in pom.xml, add dependency X, add dependency X, and add Artifactory URL also. So that this project will be connected to the remote repo and get that jar. Whereas in local repo, it will be available only in your system only. In your system, but remote repo, the jars will be available for across the different projects, provided they will be able to connect to this through URL. So there are some third-party remote repositories. You can try with JFrog, Nexus. See, this is one of the, you can try this. I don't have currently that setup actually. That's why. See, JFrog artifact. You can try here. There will be some edition. Some free edition also will be there. Start for free. But actually it's a pricing, but start for free you can do. I'm just sending it is. So like that, MVN install will install in the local repo. MVN deploy will deploy to the remote repo. So provided for remote repo, you should specify the URL in the distribution management like this. Okay. Any questions till now? So tomorrow I'll complete some portion of the Maven and then I'll go for the other library, logging library. Okay then. Thank you all. See you tomorrow. Okay then. Thank you all.